My name is Wong Chuman, and this is James Tan, my colleague. Today we want to share with you a project that we have completed in Singapore, the Mandai Rainforest Resort. It is located in the most sensitive ecological part of Singapore in a little patch of rainforest, and it is of significance because it's also the water catchment reserve of Singapore, so it's very ecologically sensitive. Singapore has, in the last 60 years, moved from a garden city to a city in nature. So what is very important for Singaporeans is to build a new love of nature, and we want to share that with the world. Our client hosted an international design competition. We won the competition, and we were entrusted to showcase this love of nature in the Mandai Wildlife Reserve, a series of nature parks where this eco-resort is located, 338 keys of it. And we worked together with Banyan Tree to create a new brand experience to really craft a journey about nature. And this is the whole message that we were asked to do. It's part of a much larger development, 126 hectares in total. Mandai Wildlife Reserve is the larger project, has the Singapore Zoo and the Night Safari and 4 new nature attractions. And our project is only in 4.5 hectares of very dense jungle. And the whole strategy here was to regenerate, to design a building. We're architects and interior designers, by the way. And we chose a strategy rather than be very exclusive to be inclusive. We chose a strategy to create an experience for many people, right? There are over 4 million people who come here a year and a couple of 100,000 that will stay in this. So we wanted to create a building that occupied disturbed space on the site, stitched together the site and regenerated the site into a whole. And the idea is within 10 years, you wouldn't even see this building anymore. The building is a super low energy building, uses 40 to 50% less energy than conventional hotels, powered by solar. It has no distinct form, and it really blends in. And this message of blending in is both intentional as well as educational. And it really stems from a paradigm shift in thinking. In the traditional zoo, you cage the animals, you walk around the animals. But in our paradigm, we contain ourselves in a safe zone and we let the animals roam around us. And this is the fundamental attitude that we hope to create for everyone in the world, because now in Singapore you can see otters roaming the streets as well. And it's also about inclusivity and biodiversity. It's about a new way of looking at nature. You know, you forget that nature looks back at you and they see you and you see them. And the scale is so different. So this building was designed with a new language of nature, a language of design, where as architects and interior designers, we wanted to bring the jungle in to the building and create a new spatial, material, and experiential relationship. So in the lobby, for example, we really bring the jungle right in. And the objective was for our guests to experience nature inside a building. And particularly what we wanted to do was to educate, inspire, and create legacy and the possibility of the next generation really loving nature, right? We spoke about craftsmanship with local artisans, and we wanted to collaborate with them to create something truly unique to showcase the hand of the person, local culture. You know, it's a beautiful facade with greenery, but what happens to the trees that we cut down? So we wanted to create both the authentic tree as furniture as well as the locally crafted tree, using their designs to create an authenticity of expression. So we harvested all the felled trees. We had to cut some trees, and we did not waste a single tree. The stems was used to create an artificially engineered timber that was reused, and the bark was then cast onto the concrete to have the living memory of the site in all the surfaces. And as you move through the resort, you really feel the memory of the jungle around you. The building blocks were pulled apart so that the inside became outside. We had universal access. We made sure that anyone and everyone could enjoy the resort and feel the maturity of the jungle around us. The rooms were designed in a way that we gave choice totally naturally ventilated. If you could do that, the surfaces peel back and slide open to allow you to really understand. The interior design in particular was all about Singaporean culture and craftsmanship and vernacular. And in the choices of temperature control, you could decide how much energy you used. And by blending the natural elements together with the man-made crafted elements, there was a rich narrative about nature itself, as well as local tropical culture. So it was very important for us to have play. So here, what you have is a design where the art and the furniture design, the lighting design in particularly, really created a very strong narrative. And this whole idea of choice and education was very important to us, right? You could control how much energy you use, for example, in the temperature. Now, a jungle is defined by many layers. The building being lifted up and still allowed for natural ventilation. But you really don't understand that because until you really read through the story of how the artwork tells the botanical history of the site, it really doesn't come to you. But once you understand, you really can appreciate it. So you relate back to the nature that surrounds you. The tree houses themselves use passive displacement ventilation to cool the room. You could go totally naturally ventilated. But the more important thing was the fact that the interior design really brought forth local culture, local craftsmanship, the local vernacular, and the romance of being in the jungle. We designed, it's called Mandai Rainforest Resort for a reason. It rains a lot of the time, and we wanted the rain to be beautiful. The romance of being in the rain, being in raw nature was something that was very, very important to us. And so it is in every aspect of the interior design. We wanted the guests to interact with nature, to be able to reach in, harvest the herbs in the spa, mix their own essential oils. The spa pods themselves, Malayan pangolin, and endangered species. That aspect of actually being able to recognize you're inhabiting something that was precious, having a spatial and material experience was very, very important to the guest experience. So it is with food. It's a forage is all about a farm-to-table experience. You get to go in to the restaurant and harvest the herbs, and it becomes part of your meal. And when you're in the all-day dining, you encounter a conservatory-type atmosphere that is using all the recycled timber. And it's rich, nature is so rich. The fungi that is on the forest floor becomes incorporated into the design of the carpet in the banqueting hall, and the mycelium nature, the Voronoi patterns become the ceiling, rich in messaging and rich in contextualism, right? But most importantly is impact. Knowing how the guest can really understand and appreciate the love of nature. In the past 6 months since we've been open, we were so gratified to see the response, So the people who come here, we hope that their lives will really be impacted and really change. And when they see this raw nature around them, we hope to develop the citizen ecologist. We want every guest to be an advocate for nature and have real impact into the future, especially the kids. So this is some of the messaging that has come through in social media. We're very gratified to see that. In conclusion, I think, it's always possible to design a beautiful project. But what is rare is the possibility of transformation of people and their love of nature and really creating a lasting legacy where we could make them fall in love again with nature and possibly repair some of the damage that we have caused. So this is our hope for this project. Thank you very much.
Well, that's very impressive. You did all the architecture and all the interiors.
We had 150 specialists to help us through the technically difficult bits, and we learned a whole different language of design.
Well, this is a very impressive project with immense amount of detail. It goes from the very kind of conventional room through to these pangolin-like kind of shell structures. It relies on nature in the rawest sense possible. And I'm getting a feeling of lots of creepy crawlies and big spiders and all of that. I'm very curious to know how you maintain a safe environment for the guests.
We have-
So if
yeah.
they wake up with a giant spider on their pillow, they're not going to be happy, are they?
No.
So could you help us understand how you manage this sort of maybe almost invisible barriers that kind of prevent the guests being in danger?
There is a science to how we can live closer to nature. Don't forget, our client is the zoo. So they have a lot of knowledge. So we around the project is this thing called a ha-ha wall. It's a ditch with 2 meters of water. So we're safe. You could see the animals. You can see them, they can see you, but they don't harm you. The smaller creatures, snakes, spiders, and all that, we live with it. And if you know how to live safely with them, as you would see on National Geographic, they're more afraid of you than you are of them. We use dragonflies, for example. We bred dragonflies in the eco ponds to control the mosquitoes. We use 0 pesticides. So I think the message that we're trying to convey in this project is, especially for the kids, if they're educated, they understand, and they overcome the fear of nature, we can live closer to nature. And that, I think, is the most powerful message.
I mean, it's very difficult to, as an architect, to separate the architecture from the interiors, and we're really talking about interiors today. But it is, I think, as Nigel said, it's a fascinating project. I suppose you talk about education a lot, and that's where people really engage with the building, which is then the interior. But it's basically a luxury hotel, as far as I can see, isn't it?
Absolutely not. The mission was to create it to be affordable to everyone. We have over 4 million visitors a year and a couple 100,000 people here. The charge to us was to allow every Singaporean to come here at least for a staycation. So the room rates, in case you're interested, you can Google it, could be as low as $300. If you went for a suite or a tree house, we'd be up at $1,000+, right? So you have a price point that anyone in the world could come here and enjoy it, and that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Reach. You want reach.
But for example, could a school bring a class of children there for the day?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, that's
So,
really
so
what
that's
I'm
the whole
driving at.
point. We
Yeah.
want to have people, lots of people.
Thank you. Congratulations. I think it's a very tough job, working in this
8 years.
jungle. Huh?
8 years.
Okay, I really love the bark idea. I love the vegetation. I think all the hotels should have a lot more. I want to know about how you deal with the lighting, especially at night, and also for the vegetation inside the hotel. These both, two of these.
So as far as lighting is concerned, it was a huge issue for us because animals breed at night. And so the color temperature of the lighting was controlled to a certain Kelvin in order for us to not affect their cycle.
It's 2,200 Kelvin to 3,000 Kelvin. You can't go any higher. It's a bit of a warm white spectrum, and all the lights have to be down lights. It can't be up lighting because then you affect the flight of the nocturnal bats and birds and everything. So we are very sensitive to that.
Yeah, I mean, lighting was a huge issue. And the other question was about interior planting. Yes, okay. Yeah, so we're lucky because in Singapore, this has been a big thing in the last few years. So there is a whole technology to plant almost soilless now. And the issue of maintenance, we don't like maintenance. We are trying to go for less maintenance. So it requires science to know how to create the sort of right mix of volcanic soil and peatless soil together with irrigation to create long-lasting plants. It's also about species, choosing plants that can live in low light and plants that can live on vertical surfaces that does not require constant maintenance.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
At the beginning, it reminded me a bit of the, I'm sure you're familiar with the Geoffrey Bawa Kondalama Hotel in Sri Lanka, which has the same kind of, the jungle modernism or the naturalist modernism architecture I had a question because somehow you've showed us an incredible treatment of the facade, of the exteriors, of the architecture, which is almost an interior treatment in terms of carefulness and textures with the concrete footprinting of the wood and the barks. And I wanted to know, it's a bit surprising, but maybe that has to do with the relative affordability of the hotel when you bring us to the dining rooms, which suddenly seems to be, in some aspects, far more, I would say, standard or less treated with the same carefulness and the same attention to materials and as Nigel said, we're dealing with the interiors, and it's very difficult to here in this case to make the difference between the interior and the architecture. But suddenly there are some moments you've showed us which seemed oddly not as I would say more a bit more
Conventional?
yeah, maybe. Yeah, exactly. It's especially the dining room and the cafeteria that seems suddenly a bit off track of the rest of the experience. I would like to understand, was it a budget issue? Was it what brought you there?
You raised an interesting point. We all went to the Kandalama with the client, and to be honest, they felt a bit upset because it was very raw, if you've been to the Kandalama. We're talking about families, children, food safety. So when it came to the actual interiors, as much as we pushed, there were certain practical considerations. Safety was primary, food safety in particular, right? So it was hygiene was a huge issue. So we were forced to use engineered materials, number one, and to have a standard of care that we did not create unintentional illness.
Is it the same situation with the little children bed in the room, which itself, again, kinds of belongs to an environment which is not as, I would say, refined or sophisticated as what you show when you around the swimming pool, on the spas or the tree houses. There's a kind of a discrepancy there that, so it was hygiene, money, budget, client?
I would say a combination of all of those. The client definitely wanted to have that safari feel, right, to excite the family. What you saw on the wall was not wallpaper, in case you're wondering. I wish you guys could visit. It is actually the botanical art that was done by a local artist, imprinted onto an engineered plaster. It had tactility, which unfortunately you don't see there. The wood had real texture. It was real wood that we recycled. And when you touched it, you could feel the jungle.
That was a question I was going to ask, because I think, I mean, the project's amazing, by the way, but I think when you look at the interiors, what you did more than other architects done was to really use the nature. When you see the plants growing inside, lots of architects try really hard to do that, don't always succeed that well. And I just wonder, at some point, why did you keep going? Like, you then put a print of plants in the sliding doors. I was going to ask a question about the wallpaper, but I think what was really nice, the authentic part of the project was really how nature was used. But then you carried on with, printing plants in glass panels or putting the wallpaper on. And the landscape itself is really rich. Did you need to do that? Because sometimes in the inside it looked a bit too much. Like you had the nature there, you had the beauty there. Did you need to do so much inside?
I think yes. I think what you didn't manage to see because of the short time, and it's a large project, right, is the whole point of the blurring between architecture and interior design is very deliberate. The very fact that you can't exactly tell where one starts and one ends, I think, is our inevitable destiny as a species. That is intentional. We don't want to have silo of architecture and interior design. They should coexist, and nature should come inside, and architecture should embrace nature as a whole system of thinking. Whole system engineering requires us to have a new relationship. And I think that's what's going to save our planet. This kind of reorienting of our awareness. And by the way, there is no wallpaper in the whole project. There is nothing of traditional interior design here. intentionally. It may not be apparent to you, but the richness of the interior design is about biodiversity. Many of our projects, people say, well, why is there sort of like jarring language? Because nature is diverse. It will be monotonous to do what architects typically do, the same language for consistency. Nature is not consistent, and that is the point.
Also, can I just add one point to Adrian's question about the dining hall being a bit more played down? The theme of that was a planter shed, a very humble planter shed that actually existed on site before. So we wanted to bring that memory, but there were other spaces that were more dramatic, like the banquet hall with the fungi roof and everything.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that the planter shed was in the memory of the humble planter shed that actually stood in that location.
Well, one word. Wow. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.